Okay, we are live. That's right, we're live. What are we going to talk about today? Baseball. We're talking about baseball. Good afternoon, good morning. It's 10:30 my time, so whether you're watching this later, right now, I'm going to the chat room to check it out, see how many friends I have today. Good morning, Unholy Toledo. Nice to see you. Malpal should be coming around soon. Al Cola, nice to see you and your dogs are there. Hi, dogs. I put a link in the chat room because I wanted to show you guys some of the images for a couple of articles that I'm going to go through today. Our friend Mike Gianella, who writes for Baseball Prospectus, does player evaluations early in the season, pre-season. He does player evaluations. His are different than most, and I stress the fact that I think they're more accurate than most because he uses a system when he evaluates the cost of a player, the value of a player, that he only uses the number of players that are actually going to be drafted. So he takes a certain group of hitters and he uses like when we talk about batting averages and stuff, we'll be talking about the players that were drafted. So it's not an average of all the batting averages in baseball. It's an average of the drafted players in baseball. So, and also he uses for his values a total of 3,120, which is the total number of money spent at an auction draft in a 12-team league. So when you're doing your auction values and your player valuations at the early in the season, when you're getting ready to draft, it's important that you only use the number of players that are going to be drafted. And you only use the amount of money that can possibly be spent. So a lot of times you'll see lots of projections, auction values, and all these things, but you'll add up all the values, and it's like some crazy number like $5,000. And we know that 12 teams, typically at $260 a team, it's only going to add up to so much money. So you can't spend money that is not in the pot to spend. And I think it's very helpful to make sure that you consider these things when you're doing player evaluation. So what Mike Gianella did most recently is look at what happened in 2020. Now, I mean, here's the thing about forecasting statistics on players, and especially, I mean, it's never been more true than what we're seeing this season because of the crazy season that we had last year. You question whether or not these stats for 2020 can be just, averaged out to a full season and then expect those players to get those stats. So like 162 games. So if you stole 4 bases in 2020, are you going to be expected to steal 12 bases in 2021? Some of them, maybe. Some of them we're going to talk about today, that some of the statistics that he brought up and that I've also noticed along the way. See, the problem with forecasting statistics for players, and again, especially in this season, is that it doesn't just involve past statistics. It involves human element, which could be anything from a player's personal life. Is he going through a divorce? Did he just move houses? Is his baby up all night keeping him awake? Is he fighting with his girlfriend? There's like all these things that come into play that could. What about the manager? Like certain situations where managers, like if you're a speed guy, does your manager allow you to have a green light? Or are you playing for a manager that loves to let you run? Those make a big difference. Ballpark makes a difference. Lots of external variables going on with forecasting players. So no matter how accurate you are, there's always going to be situations that arise that change the outlook of a player, or what they actually do in comparison to what you expect them to do. So is it I think that the way to grade, and I learned this from Ron Chandler, which is when you're grading yourself as far as what like last year, we're going to take projections from last year. How did we do on those projections? Obviously, it's pretty well known that like the most accurate projections that a person can get is like 70% accurate. So there's already 30% that's just not going to be accurate no matter what you do, because of all of these external variables that we talk about. But when you say, okay, I projected so-and-so to get 30 saves and he only got 15 saves because the GM decided to make a trade in the middle of the season, and they brought on another closer. So my guy only got 15 saves when he would have had 30 if the situation was the same as it was when we entered the season. Is that a successful projection, even though you projected 30 and he only got 15? I would say yes, because it's, there's a lot of different situations. Let's say that you projected a player to hit 250 and steal 20 bases, and he hits 250 and steals 10 bases. Or the other way around. Let's say he steals 20 bases, but he hits 230 or 270. So you may or may not get one or more projections correct. I put a link in the document in the chat room. I put a link for the last year's draft guide. I thought that it would be an interesting thing to go over some of the projections that I put into the draft guide last year for sleepers, busts, and what actually happened. So I know a lot of people will, pick and choose which projections that, they did well on and forget about the projections that they didn't do so well. I think we should look at it as a whole. And of course, there's some players that I was right. There's some players that I was wrong. And I think that, further analysis will tell us why this happened. Maybe it won't. But there's certain things you just can't predict no matter what throughout the season. So what we do know is that players tend to perform within the framework of their history. So trends are something that we can pretty much tell, like, there's lots of home runs, there's lots of strikeouts, there's 3 true outcomes for hitters that just seems to increase every season. More and more, we're seeing more 3 true outcome hitters. We also know that starting pitchers are not being relied upon to go late into games as much as they used to. And I think especially in 2020, we saw a lot more innings from relief pitchers. Well, that's fine, but in a full season, a manager's not going to trot his reliever out there, for 1 or 2 innings every single night. So the fact that it was only 60 games, I think that allowed managers to be a little bit more flexible and put their relievers in more, because he knows that they're not going to wear out quickly. They're not going to. And another thing that you do know is that teams that are probably going to make the playoffs and expect to be in the postseason, you won't see them overworking their relievers as much as a team maybe that wouldn't be expected to make the playoffs, because the last thing you want to do as a playoff team is get to the playoffs, get to the postseason, and have your relievers just burn out. So another thing that we can somewhat tell, but I think it's becoming less and less of a tell, which is playing time. We know that if you're hitting, then the manager will find a way to get you into the lineup for the most part, unless you're absolutely horrendous in defense. Even then, though, guys like Nicholas Castellanos, you will see in the lineup every day, because he is a benefit in the lineup as a hitter, and it's worth having him in the lineup. It's worth dealing with the horrible defense. And so we can kind of gauge playing time. But again, if a hitter is hitting, they will find a way into the lineup. And same goes for if a hitter is not cutting the mustard, he will be on the bench. Like it or not, no matter what their name is, if they're not hitting, they're not going to be in the lineup. So there's injury, injury history. How much does injury history project injuries risk? It's a pretty good sign. I mean, it's a pretty solid sign that if a hitter is constantly on the IL every year, if he spends time on the IL every year, he's more likely to be on the IL next year. What about a guy that got hurt last year for the first time? It depends on age. It depends on individual. There's a lot of variables. It's based on individual players, their age a lot, and their ability to recover from injury. there's just so much noise when we talk about statistics and projecting statistics that it's almost impossible. And this year makes it all the more impossible. So I would say that there's a couple things to look at as far as what we can see from last season. Like there was some batting average outliers last year. Players that hit well above the norm, right? So Juan Soto hit 351 batting average last year. He was the first NL hitter to bat 350 since Chipper Jones did it in 2008. And Albert Pujols also did that too. So does that mean that he's, and also DJ LeMahieu, like he hit 360. He's the first AL hitter to bat 360 since Joe Mauer did it in 2009. A lot of these stats go back to 2009. It's an interesting season because I think there was a lot of steroids going on. I'm not really sure, but 2009 seems to be a lot of, like we're going to talk about, it hasn't happened since 2009. For instance, 9 qualified batters, okay, they hit 320. And that hasn't happened since 2009 when there was 14 batters who hit 320. And if batting average increased all across baseball as a norm last year, it wouldn't even be that noticeable, but it didn't. It actually fell again. It's been falling, and it will probably continue to fall, the batting average. But if it happened all across the board, it wouldn't even be that big of a deal. We wouldn't even really notice these, but we do because the actual batting average across the league dropped 11 points from 256 to 245. That's the lowest league average for non-pitcher hitters ever. So we're not including pitchers in this because there were no pitchers hitting last year. This is just batters. So the fact that it dropped by 11 points, that's obviously a little bit crazy. I don't think it's going to continue to drop like that. In fact, it'll probably actually be higher than last year across the board, but we don't really know. What we do know is that 1968 was the last time that it was the lowest batting average ever that were not pitchers. That was 1968. It was lower than that total by 0.00039. So like tiny bit. If you see a guy like Juan Soto, yes, you can imagine he's probably going to hit 300, maybe 290. I would look at his stats even prior to last year. That's what you're going to have to do a lot. You're going to have to take what you see from last year and you're going to have to compare it to the player's history. And you're going to, there's a lot of different ways that they're doing things this year. Like, okay, we're going to usually you give the most recent season the most cred. And if you take 2020 and you say, okay, I'm not going to give it the most influence on how I'm going to project these players. I'm going to give 2019 the same credit as I give. So like I'll say 50% and 50% for 2019, 2020. Usually it would be like 70% 2020 and 30% 2019, whatever it is that you do. You usually give the most recent season the most cred when you're trying to figure out what's going to happen next. But you definitely have to take into consideration the type of hitter, the type of runner, what they've shown in the past, and that is going to help you figure out what we can expect in the future. There won't be, we talked about, like, is there going to be a hitter that bats 400? After 60 games in, past seasons, we've seen hitters, batting that high, 400 after 60 games. And then what does it do? It evens out over 162 games. So you can expect that these DJ LeMahieu's, the Juan Soto, all of these hitters, they were not going to average that out over a full season. So comparing them to guys that have actually hit 350 before, is Chipper Jones and Albert Pujols, Joe Mauer, these guys. It's not really that. I don't think it's that reliable because over a 162 game season, some hitters are first half hitters. Some hitters don't even wake up till the second half. So they just got screwed in 2020, right? Like, who was it that gosh, just recently I remember saying this guy doesn't even wake up till the second half of the season. This is just a couple years ago, but I can't remember who it was. Either way, there are players that, you know, are notorious for having first half, second half seasons. Who was that? It's like right on the tip of my tongue, and I don't know, maybe it'll come to me as we continue to talk. The stolen base count increased last season. So major league hitters were on pace to steal 2,390 bases in 2020 in a full season. Okay. That's a 110 stolen base increase from 2019, where they stole 2,280. That's kind of a lot of stolen bases. When you think of it, like, it's still the second lowest total since MLB expanded to 30 teams in 1998. So stolen bases are obviously the lowest point they've ever been. It's just too risky to allow runners to steal bases when they can be hit in with the power guy coming up, the true outcome guy coming up. It's just not worth risking an out for. We've talked about that a lot of times. But like the Padres, I talk about the Padres. Where is Malpal? Is he here yet? Hey, dogs. Hey, Mrs. Unholy. Nice to see you. 1, 2, 3, 4 dogs. 4 dogs love it. Her. They know who the mom is, okay? Hey, Malpal. Calrona, Cyclonus. Hi, Greg. Zelmo's here? Yay, Zelmo's here. Whoopee. Okay, so let's talk about the stolen bases. The Padres were on pace to steal 149 bases, which would have been the highest team total since 2016 when the Brewers stole 181 bases. 7 teams stole at least 100 bases. Let's talk about Jurickson Profar, who was a Padre. Now he's a free agent. He was on pace for 20 stolen bases. Now, we're talking about a guy that is he really a stolen base guy? He hasn't stole 10. I mean, he stole 10 bases in 2018 and 524 at bats. In 2019, the full season, he stole 9 bases. So the fact that he stole 7 bases in 2020, do we expect him to steal over 20 bases in 2021? I mean, look, I think it's going to depend a little bit on where he goes, but this is a player that is not known for stealing bases. And to expect him to steal bases in 2021 is a miscalculation. A computer system, a projection system that's based on averaging out the season into a full season, the 2020 season, if we're dealing with projection systems that are averaging it out into a full season, they say, oh, because they'll look at Jurickson Profar and they'll say, oh, he hit 7 home runs and he stole 7 bases. That means he's going to hit 21 home runs and he's going to steal 21 bases. And that is not good. That is because the computer can't tell the difference between what we can see in past history, what we can see for Jurickson Profar. He's not a stolen base guy. What about his batting average? We have in 2019, he hit 218. In 2020, he hit 278. What does that mean? His strikeout percentage is not high. Why is his batting average so low at 218 in 2019? Why is his batting average so low? His batting average on balls in play was only 218. So that accounts for some of it. But his strikeout rate, he only strikes out like 14% of the time or 13% of the time. He's not a huge strikeout guy. So why did he have such a bad batting average? And I mean, this guy has the most ridiculous batting average. It's 250, 218, 278. These are like all across the board. Who knows what to expect? What we do know about Jurickson Profar is that his contact rate, it stays the same. It's 81.5%. Last year, it was 81.1%. Over his career, it is 82.9%. So he is definitely making contact. He doesn't strike out a lot. So he's got decent plate discipline. His hard contact rate went down substantially last year from 37 to 29%. Who knows why that happens. But what I know about Profar is that depending on where he goes, he's probably going to be a decent, if he can stay healthy. If he could stay healthy, he actually stayed healthy. Let's see, games. I don't have number of games on here, but he had 180 at bats last year. I think he stayed healthy most of the season. That don't like hold me to that. Maybe he didn't, but the year before and the year before, 524 at bats, 459 at bats. Looks to me, I mean, like he is capable of staying healthy. If he goes to Colorado, he's going to probably hit 30 home runs. If he goes to San Diego, he's probably going to hit, like last year he hit 20 home runs. Who knows? Xander Bogaerts is another one with stolen bases. We talk about stolen bases. He stole 8 bases last year. Xander Bogaerts hasn't stole more than 8 bases in a full season since 2017. I think he's in his 30s now. Maybe he's like right around 30, but he's not going to steal 24 bases in 2021, even though a projection system may calculate him. If you multiply 8 times 3, that's 24 stolen bases. You can't even possibly think that Xander Bogaerts is going to steal 24 bases, not even 20 bases. Like I said, he hasn't stolen more than 8 bases in a season since 2017. Don't trust that. Another player, so it's not really like the Mondesies that we're talking about. It's not really like the guys that are stealing a ton of bases that you can pretty much rely on for stolen bases. This is the type of guy that is in the middle in stolen bases, or like, maybe stole 5 or 6 or 7. You got to take an extra second to look at this and say to yourself, like, okay, is this normal? Kiner Falefa, this guy, okay, stole 8 bases in 2020. The year before that, in 2019, he stole 3 bases. But this guy gets caught stealing all the time. He stole 8 bases. He was caught stealing 5 times in 2020. That is not going to get him a free pass. It's not going to make the manager feeling confident when he's on the base path to just be like, okay, go ahead and steal, because he's getting caught way too much. Even in 2018, when he had 396 plate appearances, he got caught stealing 5 times and he stole 7 bases. So out of 12 attempts, he was successful 7 times. He's not going to steal bases. He's not going to steal 20 bases. That's for sure. I would say maybe 8 bases, maybe. If you're lucky in a full season, that's what you should expect out of this guy. This is another guy with the batting average that just goes all over the place. 261, 238, 280. I don't know. Maybe it has something to do with how often he gets to play, because in 2020, he was able to play in 58 out of 60 games. In 2019, he only played in 65 games. Maybe that has something to do with his horrible batting average. Maybe he just didn't get into the groove, like maybe he didn't. I mean, consistent playing time helps a batter be more consistent. That's the bottom line. Mark Canha, right? So he stole 4 bases last year. Is he going to steal 12 bases in 2021? No, he's not. Do you want to know why? Because he's 32. He's not stole more than 3 bases in a season since 2015. And he stole 7 bases in 2015. That was likely a full season of at bats. You have a guy that is, like I said, he's 32. I mean, Mark Canha, we're going to talk about a little bit because I have him in the draft guide as a sleeper from last year. And did he live up to the sleeper hype? I don't know. He had 5 home runs, 32 runs, 33 RBIs, 4 stolen bases, and a 246 batting average. Is that great? No, but is it more than what you probably paid to get him on your team? Yeah, probably, I would say. $19 he earned in AL only. Another player to look at when we're talking about stolen bases is Alex Verdugo. Alex Verdugo is not a stolen base guy for the most part. I mean, the most bases he's ever stole in a season is in the minor leagues. In 2015, he stole 14 bases between high A and A. That's 500 at bats. He stole 14 bases. That's 2015. And I'm just saying that even last year before, 2019, he had 343 at bats. He stole 4 bases. I don't think that players, start stealing bases in their older age. Like, I'm not saying that Verdugo is old by any stretch of the imagination, but he's not young either. And when you don't see a player stealing bases in the minors on a regular basis, then you're not going to see him stealing bases at the major league level. That's almost a given. And like Yoan Moncada is going to be another player that we're going to talk about in a little while, because I had him in the draft guide as a big bust. And yes, he's still striking out 30% of the time. You cannot expect him to have a great batting average when he's striking out 30% of the time. And he's not going to steal bases like he used to. We expected him when he came up with the White Sox that he was going to be this great stolen base power hitter. And he hits the ball so hard, but his stolen bases are going to decrease exponentially every season from here on out, because he's just not 22 anymore. I think he's younger than I portray him as, though. I don't think he's old. I don't think he's like older. But when you hit for that much power, I just don't see them allowing him to steal bases. So you can count out the stolen bases, and you can count on the 30% strikeout rate, which is just a losing situation every time. For saves last year, we saw only 6 relievers were on pace to save 30 games in 2020. And 4 out of 6 of those closers are free agents right now. The last time that there were fewer than 7 relievers who earned 30 saves, it was in 1986. Why is that? I mean, we're seeing a lot of different, like we're seeing the changes in the way that managers are using pitchers, from the effector to the starting pitchers going way less than they used to go innings, and the multi-inning relievers also having more than one capable closer. I just think there's a lot at play here, but out of those 6, 4 of them are free agents. So what does that say? I mean, it says that in this day and age right now, COVID funds are not paying for closers, top closers. The thing about the saves and the closer situation is that you're talking about 20 to 25 innings for these closers. And it's really hard to project what would happen, because think about it. One bad outing is going to create such a crazy anomaly in the statistics, in like the percentage statistics such as ERA, WHIP, these types of things. If you have one bad outing where you walk like 4 or 5 batters as a closer, your whole ERA and WHIP are just screwed for the season. It just doesn't tell us a lot about closers. What we do know about closers is like the whole closer carousel is like going full speed this year. And yes, there's lots of discrepancies. Alcola, and I know that you are one of the people that we have engaging in the chat room that just is really questioning the 2020 statistics and the importance of those statistics. How valuable are they going to be? Everybody gets to make up their own mind about how much do they want to put into 2020. For starting pitchers, we know that the reliance on starting pitchers is shrinking. The 2020 season was an opportunity to use the bullpen more often, because we talked about the fact that they're not going to get worn out. We don't have to worry about that last year, but we will in 2021. We will have to worry about teams saying, I'm not going to wear out my guy by putting him out there every game, and I'm going to need to rely on my starting pitchers a little bit more. It's interesting because this morning I was doing some research, and this is actually did I put this in here? I don't think I put the picture in here. Let me put this image in that I have. For the number of pitchers that pitched, more than 6 innings per game started, right? So I calculated the pitchers. I do this every year, but this year even more so. Okay, there's the number of pitchers. There's I think there's like 12 or 15 pitchers that actually pitched more than 6 innings per game started. And then also the next image is going to be the teams that it seems to be that there's like a pattern here of which teams are willing to allow their starting pitchers to go more than 6 innings, or which like actually do on a consistent basis. So you see several teams on this list. Here, let me put the link in here again because I don't see anybody. Get the link. Okay. It's at the bottom of the document that I'm sharing. It's at the bottom. Hey, buddy. I love these dogs, furry guys. Okay. Okay. Chicago Cubbies. They had 3 of their starting pitchers go at least on average over 5 innings per start. 4 Cleveland pitchers. 4 of the Cleveland starting pitchers went over 5 innings per start, and 3 of them went over 6 innings per start. That's crazy. That shows you that Cleveland is more likely to, if you get a starting pitcher on Cleveland, you know that they're more likely to leave their pitcher out there if they're doing well. Chicago White Sox. I changed Lance Lynn's team from Texas to the White Sox because I think that a good chunk of the reason that they decided to grab Lance Lynn is because he is an innings eater. Like he is, you can rely on him to get a couple hundred innings every year. The White Sox obviously put value into their starting pitchers going deep into games. You have Dallas Keuchel, Giolito, and Lance Lynn now on the White Sox that go deep into games. In Houston, you had Greinke, Framber Valdez, and Urquidy go over 5 innings per start. And Valdez went 6.41 innings per start. See, these are a little bit like the points. The decimal spots, they're a little misleading because in baseball there's 3 outs instead of a whole 10 in, you know what I mean? Like there's 3 parts instead of 10 parts. So when it says 6.41, that's misleading. He's going a little more than 6 innings. So he's going to 6 innings and 1 out. 6.30 would be 6 innings and 1 out. Okay. I hope that makes sense, but I'm not that great at explaining it. Okay. And then you have Philadelphia, who had Eflin, Nola, and Wheeler all go deep into games, but those are it. And the Cubbies. Kyle Hendricks, Yu Darvish, and Alec Mills. Innings pitched per game started. These are the teams. And I mean, even look at Arizona. They had 2 pitchers going 6 innings apiece, Zach Gallen and Merrill Kelly. But I just thought, I think it's interesting because I do think that there's a pattern in which teams are going to allow their pitchers to go deep into games and which aren't. A lot of it's going to depend on the quality of pitcher that you have. So, of course, look at the pitchers on the list. And I didn't even put the free agents on this list. So it's kind of also a little bit misleading too because the free agents like Trevor Bauer's not on here. Cincinnati had Luis Castillo and Trevor Bauer, but you don't see that because Bauer's on free agent. I probably should have done it a little different. But as far as how important it is to target pitchers that can go deep into games, I think that it adds value for sure to these pitchers, like a guy such as Marco Gonzalez, who, yes, he probably had a better season than what he's going to have next year. But Marco Gonzalez has shown signs of being a fantasy relevant pitcher for several years now. I remember Adam Ronis 2 years ago, we were talking about him on a show. Marco Gonzalez, he was pretty high on him. Obviously, Seattle's a crappy, they don't score a lot of runs. They don't win a lot of games. So Marco Gonzalez is like not really in the conversation, but he pitches in a great ballpark for pitchers, and there are good things about him. And then you look at Colorado, and you see that Senzatela and Herman Marquez are both pitchers that go over 6 innings per game started. Okay, you got to weigh your assets here with the liabilities, which is Colorado Coors Field is a nasty place to pitch, and I just think that Colorado pitchers are better for daily game than they are in season long because you can choose when you want them to pitch. Okay. So let's see, going back over here. That's the point. Value pitchers that go deep into games. I think it's important to look at least. So even though NL, okay, there was no pitchers hitting in the National League, I'm just going to assume that there's no DH for the National League in 2021. I think that they're too busy using it as a bartering chip, even though both the managers and the players, the owners and the players, they both want the DH in both leagues, and everybody wants it. The fans want it, but it's a bartering chip for some crazy reason. It makes no sense. Anyway, I think they're going to deny us that for this year. And I think that that will then again add a little bit more value to National League pitchers because of the fact that they don't have to face a DH. And even though American League hitters, for the first time, I don't remember if it ever, I'm not sure if it ever happened, but the American League hitters, let's see, okay, let me see. Pitchers struck out 44% of the time in 2019. NLDH last year hit 235 with a 319 on base percentage, 134 home runs, and 26 steals. Okay. NL pitchers in 2019, they hit 131 with a 161 on base percentage, 25 home runs, and 4 steals. So no matter how bad the NLDH was, it was still way better than the NL pitchers hitting are. And so you're going to see less hitters. That means less opportunity. Like there's going to be less valuable players to draft because think about 15 teams minus 1 hitter. And minus 1 opportunity for at bats because you obviously in fantasy you're not going to get the hitting statistics from your pitchers, but so it hurts. It narrows the player pool. The AL pitchers actually had a lower ERA last year than National League pitchers. I'm not really sure when the last time that was flipped around. I don't recall it ever being because National League pitchers are just known to have a better ERA than American League pitchers, and that's because they don't have to face a DH. That's going to go back to what we are used to there. Drafted pitchers in the American League posted a 4.06 ERA and a 1.23 WHIP, and then in the NL, they had a 4.13 ERA and a 1.25 or 1.26 WHIP. So it's going to be a boost to National League pitchers once again, even though Lenny and I disagree on how much that really matters, because I say to myself, like, if I see on draft day an AL pitcher versus an NL pitcher, one of the furthest things from my mind is, well, not the furthest, I notice definitely when I'm choosing between pitchers on draft day, like, should I draft this guy or this guy? I do notice whether or not he's in a hitter's park, a pitcher's park, and National League, an American League. I think the park is obviously more important than the league that he's in. How much does AL or NL come into play? Well, the numbers say that it does, but I think it's less than it used to be. That's how I feel about it. So the next part of this show that we're doing is that we're going to go through some of the values of the players. What did they earn? We're going to start with American League pitchers. And for the second season in a row, one pitcher in the American League cracked the $50 earnings. Okay, that was Shane Bieber. He earned $54. And then you have Kenta Maeda, $40. That is, when I say plus or minus, like, let's say profit. We'll say profit. Shane Bieber was actually in 3 of these lists. He was in the most expensive list, the most profit list, and the top pitcher list. All three. Usually they don't show up in all 3 of those, but Shane Bieber did. So he made $25 profit last year. And if you look at the document I shared, these are based on what people paid in CBS, Labor, and Tout Wars. Gianella is in all 3 of those leagues. I think he plays NL with Lenny. Obviously, it's going to be a little bit more profit or more loss in AL and NL onlys, but this is just to show you. Like, Dylan Bundy was on there. He earned $29. We paid $8 for him, so he made a profit of $21. if you remove Chris Sale from that's what we're doing. We're removing Chris Sale from the most expensive pitchers, and we're just taking him out, because if you remove him, the 10 most expensive arms earn $23 per pitcher, even though they cost on average $28. But you see, it's not really about profit for the starting pitchers. I wouldn't really target trying to make the most profit. The profit comes into play when we're talking about sleepers. But when we're talking about aces and the most expensive pitchers, it's not about getting profit. It's about getting statistics. So even if you have to pay $30 for the best pitcher in baseball and he earns $25, that's still a positive. It's a net gain because you got the statistics that you needed from him. But when we're talking about pitchers like Dallas Keuchel, who wasn't even, he was drafted, but he had a $20 profit. He earned a lot more than he was drafted. So 8 out of the top 10 pitchers that earned $15, that 8 out of the top 10 pitchers earned $15. That's positive. That's better than normal. Hold on. Let me scroll up here to these pitchers and AL pitchers. The most expensive pitchers, Jose Barrios is on there. He was a net loss of 8. Charlie Morton, horrible. This is why I know that if you owned or had Charlie Morton on your team last year, you will not be drafting him again this year. No matter what team he plays for, I don't care where he pitches. I know he has a team now. I'm just saying, there's certain players, pitchers that we're talking about now, like, okay, Verlander. Verlander was a negative 31. He had an injury, so okay, we're not going to be too harsh on him. But Zach Greinke, he was negative. He was a loss of $7. Shane Bieber earned $54, and we paid $29 for him. That's huge. That's really huge. Garrett Cole, we paid $42 for. He earned $39. That wasn't a bad investment. Jose Barrios, man, I wonder about him because he just seems like he's on the verge of figuring it out. I really want to believe in him. I keep wanting to believe in him. I know that, just watching him pitch, you can kind of see like these glimpses of Jose Fernandez. Okay. Maybe that's crazy, but I feel like he's got such a great delivery. He's got some of his pitches are just unbelievable, but he doesn't seem to be able to pull it together for a full season. He didn't pull it together in a 60-game season. So what am I talking about? The most profit we got, Zach Plesac. Okay, we're going to talk about Zach Plesac in a second. I actually had him in the draft guide as a sleeper. The link to the last year's draft guide is at the top of the document I shared. I will post this in, let's see. I'm going to put it in the chat room. Copy. It's fun to look back at this and see where we went wrong and what we did right. Let me see. Copy link is what I want. Copy link. Okay, let's look at it. If you want to look at it with me, I would say go to the articles and then check out the sleepers and the late round category targets. We're going to start with the sleepers on here. And I'm going to pull up these. I actually created at Fangraphs a leaderboard of all of these players that are in the draft guide and what did they do last year. So we have hitters and pitchers. Draft guide 2020. So for hitters, we talk about Anthony Santander as a sleeper. He was a sleeper. Definitely a good sleeper pick. He strikes out very little. He doesn't strike out more than 20%. His strikeout rate last year was 15%. He doesn't walk very much. He plays for the Orioles, but he plays pretty much, he's going to play on a regular basis. He's going to have a spot in the lineup, and he's a hitter. He's a power hitter for sure. Who's next on this? One of my favorites on here has to be Zach Plesac. It's definitely my favorite sleeper that I put in the draft guide. We also have Chris Davis. So here I'm going to say I was not correct on Chris Davis. I totally was wrong about him. He never bothered to show up again. I just felt like the reasoning for me deciding that Chris Davis was a good sleeper is because look at his statistics. For the last 3 years, before last year or before 2019, he was hitting the same. He hit the same. This guy had the same batting average for 3 years straight. And I know he got hit. He got hurt in the outfield in 2019. And he played even after that. And up till the time that Chris Davis got hurt in the outfield, he was on pace for the normal season that he was used to having. And so I thought this guy was playing hurt. They never bothered to give him any injury rehab time. And so that's why I choose Chris Davis. I still believe that the reasoning behind that projection was sound. A lot of times you have to say to yourself, like, okay, even though it didn't turn out the way that I thought it was going to, what's the reason for that? Is my reasoning sound? I think it is pretty sound with Chris Davis, but I'm not doing it again. Believe me, I'm not doing it again. What did Nomar Mazara do? Nomar Mazara, 1 home run for Nomar Mazara. I have to say this was not mine. This was Kevin's putting this in. I'm going to blame all the bad ones on Kevin. So if you're out there listening, Kevin, I'm blaming you for all the bad ones. I don't know what happened to him. He had 1 home run. It wasn't good. Bad season for him. Randall Grichuk is another one in the sleeper list. He did very good. Randall Grichuk, 12 home runs, 38 runs, 35 RBIs. That was excellent sleeper. Yoan Moncada was on the bust list in here, and the same reason I just gave to you is the same reason I'm going to continue to say that Yoan Moncada is a bust. He's always going to be a bust. If he gets lucky, it's because he hits the ball so damn hard that it's bound to go out of the infield. But other than that, you could tell going into last season that Yoan Moncada was going to be a bust because my reasoning was that his batting average on balls in play was over 400, and that's just impossible. I don't care how hard you hit. It's never going to stay over 400. And you're like Javi Baez in the fact that if you continue to strike out so much, 31.2%, it doesn't matter if you had a great season, 280 batting average or something like that. In 2019, everybody was high on him. Do not get fooled by this. Batting discipline is important. If you're striking out so much, CJ Cron strikes out 30% of the time. It's going to catch up with him. No matter how hard he hits, you cannot expect him to get an everyday at bats on any team if you're striking out 30% of the time. Nomar Mazara struck out 29% of the time. In 149 plate appearances, he hit 1 home run. He struck out 29% of the time. I thought Nomar Mazara, let's see what we wrote about him. This is, again, this is Kevin, but I absolutely agreed with him that Nomar Mazara was going to be a sleeper. It says he has nearly 2,200 career plate appearances. He is not even 25 years old yet. His average exit velocity on live drives and fly balls were comparable to Eddie Rosario and Castellanos and Freddie Freeman in 2019. So his ground ball percentage dropped 10%, and his hard hit rate has steadily increased each season. He hit 19 home runs after 3 consecutive seasons of hitting 20. It was like almost a guarantee he was going to hit, what's 20 divided by 3? Like 7 or 8 homers. He did not do that. The platoon concerned by some, but he had a higher home run rate versus lefties with a batting average on balls in play less. So he does hit lefties well, but he didn't hit shit last year. So that's that. Mitch Keller is on here. The guy has a great strikeout potential. Unfortunately, this is what happens in Pittsburgh. A 7.13 ERA with a 3.19 FIP. But you pitch in Pittsburgh, so you got problems there. Mark Kana was one. Here's Zach Plesac. I love it. I'm happy about it. Even though Plesac, I don't know for sure how well he's going to do next year. It's like a total unknown. I really don't expect him to pitch the way that he did in 2020. But we saw really great things from him. Clevenger and Plesac worked together in the offseason to up his strikeout get his strikeouts on a roll, and his strikeouts increased crazy. Basically, what I wrote about him was that Mike Clevenger and Plesac trained together in Florida this offseason. Clevenger helped Plesac refine his delivery. Just like Trevor Bauer did for Clevenger a couple years back. Too bad. Clevenger, he's another one. They motivated each other. Cleveland is excellent at starting pitchers. We've already talked about the fact that they're like the leading team as far as leaving pitchers in, deep into games. We'll have to see. Aaron Savali is also on the sleeper list for last year because he threw 132 innings across 3 levels in 2019. He was very good. He had 57 innings at the major league level. His ERA was under 3 at all levels, so you expect him to do well. In 2020, Aaron Savali had a 4.74 ERA, but his fielding independent percentage was 403. It's not great, but he strikes out a good chunk of batters. He is one. Does he go deep into games? I think he's one of the Cleveland starting pitchers that can go deep into games. I'm not positive of that. 74 innings and 12 starts. So do the math, people. He hardly ever walks batters. He's got a 195 walks per 9. That's great. Obviously, I had Kevin Ginkel as a sleeper, but I also had Karen Check on there, so that kind of evened it out. Kevin Ginkel did not have Kevin Ginkel struck out 10 batters per 9 innings, which is exactly what you want from your closer, but he only pitched 16 innings, and he only earned 1 save. He was not the guy. I do think he's going to get another chance in Arizona this year because they're one of the teams that I just think, let's see who they have listed. They have Stefan Crichton listed as their closer, but his security is very low. The job security is very low. And Ginkel I think, should be another sleeper again this year. Ginkel. He's definitely worth paying attention to. He's going to go super cheap. Taijuan Walker I had on my list. You guys remember I was a big fan of Taijuan Walker just because of the fact that he was coming back after a while. I think he's a free agent now. Is he a free agent? I think he is. His ERA was 2.7, okay? In 53 innings pitched, 11 games started. He worked really hard to get back. He spent most of his career, he spent injured. And like when Seattle, I read about him coming back and pitching for Seattle. He was raised with Seattle. He was brought up by Seattle. He was happy to go back to Seattle for a season where they offered him a 1-year contract. He was like, I'll take it. He strikes out close to 9 per 9 innings. He is absolutely below the radar and should be paid attention to once again. The thing, depending on where he goes, but you remember Taijuan Walker, we all loved him. We all thought he was going to be a great, he was I think he was a pretty high rated prospect. And one thing about Taijuan Walker though, is his FIP is scary because his ERA was 2.7, but his FIP, it was 4.56 and his xFIP was 4.82. That's kind of sketchy when you look at, what to expect for next year. Still, he's got decent skills. He'll probably be a starting pitcher in a rotation wherever he goes. Mitch Keller, it's crazy with Mitch Keller. We already talked about him a second. He's a Pirate. Pitchers go to Pittsburgh and basically their career is over. It's like what they say about Mets. Like you go to Mets to die or you go to Mets to end your career, whatever it is. The Pittsburgh pitching, look at the pitchers that have left Pittsburgh and they're excellent after they leave Pittsburgh, like Glasnow, Garrett Cole. These are just 2 of the most recent I could think of that are right on the top of my mind. But Mitch Keller put up numbers last year that were completely opposite of what he did the year before, which I was reading to you in the draft guide where it said, he's got like a 7-something ERA, but his FIP is great. His FIP and his xFIP, they say that he's a much better pitcher than this. And, this is what happens. And honestly, this is what happened. He had a 2.91 ERA. His FIP was almost 7, and his xFIP was 6.57. 6.75 FIP and xFIP 6.57. What's up with him? He's like backwards every year. He had a 2.91 ERA, which is going to fool people into thinking that he is reliable or he's, a good pitcher. You're going to say, oh, he had a good season last year. I think I'll take him. No, I don't know what to expect out of this guy. He doesn't strike out a ton of batters. So his K per 9 is 6.65. He's just not worth the risk. He walks crazy batters. Last year he walked 7.48 batters per 9 innings, which is it's just not it's not good. Another guy that I was talking about last year is Kevin Gausman. Does Kevin Gausman deserve $18 million contract this year? Probably not. No. But obviously the management in San Francisco sees something in him that they like. I've been liking Kevin Gausman. I just didn't have the balls to draft him very much last year because he had not done anything. I guess not. I won't say that he had not done anything, but he was not that convincing. Like at the end of the draft, when you have to choose between, upside and upside, Kevin Gausman was not high on the radar. What is he going to go for this year? It's definitely a good idea to keep Kevin Gausman on your radar. He made 10 starts last season. He pitched 59 innings. That would tell you that he pitched 5.9 innings per start, but that's not the case because he appeared in 12 games. So he still goes 5 innings per game started. He struck out almost 12 batters per 9 innings. He walked less than 3 batters. Okay, he's got several good pitches. His ERA, his FIP, and his xFIP are all in line with each other. In fact, his ERA was 3.62 and his FIP was 3.09. His xFIP was 3.06. He pitches in San Francisco. I don't know of a better park to pitch in. I just don't know of a better park. San Diego's not what it used to be for pitchers because they keep moving in the fences because they keep adding more seats, which is great for Padres fans. There's more seats or whatever, but it's not the pitcher's paradise that it used to be. Malpel can probably attest for this. Would you take Taillon or Keller? Oh, there's no question. Taillon? No, Taijuan Walker is who we're talking about. Jameson Taillon? No way. Neither of those two pitchers are going on my roster. No way. I actually drafted Jameson Taillon in labor last year, and it was a horrible idea. Horrible. I'd probably take Mitch Keller over Taillon. I remember looking at Taillon's numbers and thinking to myself, you know what? He's pitching in LA now. I think he was in Atlanta where he came from. But I thought this guy pitches a lot of innings and he's pretty reliable for a decent ERA, not a great ERA, but I recall it being like in the mid 3s. And then I thought he could be okay, late pick, and that did not work out for me. He was horrible. Petco is no longer a pitcher's park. But see, you say in the same breath that you would draft. Which of those two, Taillon and Mitch Keller, would you draft them? Hi, Matt Hooper. Nice to see you. Gallows here. Nice to see you. Taco. Hola, friends. I didn't have the balls. Okay. Karen Shack. He's in here. Let me look at the index. This draft guide, you can check out the index if you want to find a player. I will look up. Karen Check is not in the draft guide, but I talked about him a lot last year. There's one pitch that he has that just will strike out anybody, and I don't think anybody's ever hit like really hard off of that pitch for him. So far, right? So far, so good. He is let's see what it says about him. He's an interesting character. He pitches in Cleveland. You got to love that. The pitching in Cleveland, just for some reason, is always great. He's 6'3". He weighs 215 pounds. Last year, it says at RotoWire that he struck out 82 batters in 36 innings in 2019. 82 batters in 36 innings. That's unbelievable. 56% of the hitters that he faced, he struck out. He's got a great curveball that has a ton of late movement on it, and he wasn't always a closer. He actually was a starting pitcher in college, and they switched him to relief in 2018, and his career has been soaring ever since that change. He wasn't even in the Baseball America prospect handbook. He wasn't in the minor league forecaster. He just wasn't a high rated prospect at all. But it says right there that all the evidence suggests that he will be one of the best strikeout relievers in baseball as a rookie if he can limit his walks, which let's see what he did last year. Did he limit his walks? No, he didn't limit his walks. He walked 5 batters per 9 innings. But he struck out literally 17.7 batters per 9. 17.7 batters strike out per 9 innings. Half the batters he faces. How many barrels? I think we could do barrels now on here at RotoWire. Anyways, I don't know how to find barrels yet. 17% swinging strike rate. Home runs? Does he give up a lot? No, he gives up very few home runs. He pitched 27 innings. I think that's good enough for us to get an idea of the type of pitcher that he is. Literally, in the minor leagues, this guy was striking out more than 20 batters per 9. As soon as he moved to the closing role, as soon as he became a reliever, which happens to quite a few pitchers actually, who start out as starting pitchers, they don't cut the mustard, they don't make it, they get thrown in the bullpen as punishment, and then they're crazy good. That's happened. That happens to more than one pitcher, okay? And he's somebody to target. I don't know how much he's going to cost yet. And we're going to do, in the future, we're going to do some, we're going to talk about closers in more depth, because the closing situation is very crazy. It's the closer carousel going round and round. I will leave you with this fact. On the document that I linked to in the chat room, these are images and tables from Baseball Prospectus. They come from Mike Gianella. If you don't have a membership there, you can't see them. So I'm kind of cheating by sharing them with you. But to me, it's interesting stuff to look at. You don't have to, I figured it would be a great idea to share those with you, because we could talk about it, we could look at it, and you can throw it away or not look at it. Whatever you want to do, I don't care. I had Dinelson Lamet as a bust last year. Okay? So that was one that I was wrong on. I actually had him as a bust, and I still don't regret having him as a bust, because Dinelson Lamet. Oh, here's the thing. All of these index in this draft guide is actually indexed by first name, so that's probably why I didn't find Karinchak. But let me look up Dinelson Lamet. He's on page 27 and 67. I said this is not a knock on Lamet specific, personally. I said I'm sure he will be a very serviceable pitcher. It is more about his draft spot being 131 overall. He was going at 131. That is round 10 in a 12-team league. And I realize it's more exciting to draft Lamet over a boring veteran because he strikes out a ton of batters, but he has not pitched a full season at any level. He strikes out batters like crazy, but he also allows too many home runs and walks. If he were going to a bit later in drafts, I would say by all means take a shot, but not round 10. I actually drafted him in Tout Wars, and he's part of the reason why I literally almost won Tout Wars, because the whole season, Dinelson Lamet was unstoppable. He was striking out batters just like we wanted him to, and I was wrong on Dinelson Lamet, but I wasn't that wrong. It was really based on the fact that he had not shown that he could be healthy for a season. He had already had Tommy John. We just weren't sure about, even in Petco, he's giving up home runs. I just wasn't that secure with him. Now I am kind of, what am I going to change my mind now after 60 games? I'm going to change my mind on Lamet. If my idea was that he can't go 200 innings, right? So I'm not going to draft him in the 10th round. I have to kind of say to myself, in 2021, am I willing to draft Nelson Lamet where he's going to go in drafts, which is even going to be higher, way higher than round 10? It'll probably be like round 3 or 4 now. He's going to go so much higher. I probably won't have a lot of shares of Dinelson Lamet because 60 games is not enough to say, to go against that original theory, which is he can't go 200. So, okay, that hasn't changed. Do we believe he can? Not just because he did 60. He was excellent for those 60, though, I have to say, and I would be tempted to drafting him because he's one of these pitchers that you love to have on your team when he's doing well. He is super exciting to watch. It's like Trevor Bauer, just an exciting pitcher to watch. And, oh, look, he's got an elbow injury. Imagine that. I'm not drafting him. If he goes into the season, depending, let's see, AJ Preller said that he's not expected to require off-season surgery. Here's the thing, 69 innings, okay, in 2020, 69 innings, 12 games started. The most this guy has ever pitched in a season, the most starts he's ever made in the majors is 21 starts, which was in 2017, before his Tommy John, before his injuries. And so let's see if his walks came down. I think that's another thing with him. His walks were much better than they have been. And, you know, a lot of the walks and the home runs that he allowed, a lot of that could be coming from the fact that he was working his way back from Tommy John surgery. So it's not going to be perfect. His command is not going to be perfect. And so the walks, the home runs, they can be totally forgiven if it's like, you know, what we saw in 2019, he was giving up 1.48 home runs per 9 innings. Okay, that was on his way back from Tommy John surgery. The command is not going to be perfect. So last year, he gave up 0.65 home runs per 9. That's great. He walked 2.61 per 9 after walking 3.7 batters per 9 in 2019. So both of those things I think are great. I'm happy that he is still striking out a ton. He always will. His walks are down and his stats look excellent, but I am not going to rely on this guy at the round that he's going to go. I'm just not going to have him on my team again. I had to draft him in Tout Wars because I'm like, I'm not going to, this was totally price, what's it called when you say to yourself, like, I'm not going to let this guy go for $10. So then you up the bid. And sometimes that could be very, very backfiring. It could be very bad for you. But on other times when you say to yourself, Dinelson Lamet is worth $10. And he was absolutely worth $10. Is he going to be worth like what we spend next year? Probably not, in my opinion. And that brings up one more thing. The Vlad Guerrero. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. I'm the biggest avoiding, you know, I really feel strongly about avoiding rookies and prospects in their first season or two. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. was so hyped up. It was unbelievable how much hype this guy was getting. It was like he was going to be like the next Manny Ramirez or something. You know, he was going to be his dad, and like he was going to be that in at age 19. He's going to be the youngest, best, hardest. And I mean, if you take one look at this guy, you can tell that he doesn't have the body type to be like a fast runner. He's probably not going to be the best defensive third baseman out there, which he's not. And the fact that he's naturally good at baseball did not ever push on him the idea in his mind, or like the like commitment that a lot, like Bauer, he's not physically given like an athlete's, you know, body, like from his dad or whatever. Genetics. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. has genetics. Okay, that's great. But he realized after last season, I'm going to give him a lot of credit because I'm telling you, I'm probably going to be the guy that has Vladimir Guerrero Jr. on my teams because it's that time now. It's been, everybody's forgetting him, moving on to the next best prospect. And that's a mistake, because when you expect a prospect to be the best thing since sliced bread, and they have all this pressure on them, everybody's staring at them, everybody's waiting for them to do like the most extraordinary things, a lot of times they're just not going to do it. And that's the case here. We also do know that he has taken an interest in making adjustments necessary to hit at the major league level that he didn't have to do as a minor leaguer. He's gotten into shape in the off season. He is paying more attention to his diet and his physical. Just, you lose 20 pounds, you are that much better. You have that much more range. You have that much quicker bat. You have that much quicker speed. You just are able to move better. 20 pounds is like a big deal for somebody. And, they're going to be like, oh, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is in the best shape of his life. And it's probably true. Like, they say that about everybody. But in this case, I think it says he's reportedly lost 40 pounds since July. That's like a young kid amount of weight. That's a huge amount of weight. 40 pounds since July and 20 since the end of the season. He still weighs 245 pounds, but he moved over to first base last season. I think he's going back. Is he going back to third? No. Oh, Biggio. It looks like Biggio at third. He'll play first base. Whatever it is. He only strikes out 15% of the time. That's very good. His slugging is 462. That's very good. His walk rate is less than 10%, but it's 8.2%, so it's not the worst in baseball. I do think that his contact rate got better last year, 82.8% now. That's a decent contact rate. That is a good contact rate. So this guy definitely has, with his ability to hit the ball very hard and his commitment to making adjustments that he did not ever have to do in the minors. This guy, I'm pretty sure this guy had it. Just everything was easy for him until he got to the majors. Then it wasn't that easy anymore. But okay, that happens to a lot of people. Are you willing to make the adjustments? Are you willing to commit yourself to getting in better shape? Yes, he is. He, in my opinion, deserves to be drafted, and I'm going to fight you for him probably. So that's being said, we will end on the Vladdy Jr. note. I hope you guys have a great weekend. Thank you so much for coming live and chatting in the chat room. And to all the dogs and to all the wives, Sunny D, Tony, I don't know the other wives' names. I know Mrs. Unholy Toledo. I can't remember her name, but we have Malpal's wife, Tina. And see, I've managed to remember 3 names now out of these wives, and that's a very good credit for me. So I'm going to stop babbling now, but tell everybody hello. Thanks for coming. Enjoy your weekend.